Paris, the beating heart of European diplomacy, once again finds itself at the centre of global attention. On September 3, 2025, French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Élysée Palace. Their meeting came on the eve of a critical summit of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a gathering of nations poised to discuss concrete security guarantees for Ukraine. As Zelensky crossed the courtyard of the Élysée, the cameras captured a leader whose presence has become a symbol of resistance. His dark suit, his steady walk, and his sombre expression carried the weight of 4 years of war. At the top of the steps stood Emmanuel Macron, waiting with a firm handshake that signalled solidarity. For a moment, diplomacy was distilled into a simple gesture, one European leader affirming his support for another in the face of a relentless enemy. Inside, the ritual of diplomacy continued. Macron and Zelensky sat at a polished table, aides on either side, the setting formal yet tense. Macron gestured for the Ukrainian delegation to join, a reminder that Ukraine is not on the margins of Europe but firmly at its centre. Close-ups of the two leaders revealed their contrasting burdens. Zelensky's face marked by fatigue and urgency, Macron's calm expression masking the weight of leadership. Together, they represented the fragile but determined alliance between a nation fighting for survival and a continent struggling to defend its credibility. The wider frame of the delegation sitting side by side told its own story. France and Ukraine, bound together not just by shared interests but by shared stakes. This is no longer just about Ukraine's survival. It is about Europe's ability to act, to prove that its words of solidarity can be transformed into guarantees of security. Beyond these images, the story grows more complex. The Coalition of the Willing, set to meet the next day, is more than a diplomatic invention. It is an urgent response to hard realities. With Washington sending mixed signals about NATO's future role and with domestic debates in the United States delaying critical aid, Europe has been forced to consider its own path. France, Germany, Poland and others must now decide whether to move from symbolic statements to binding commitments. For Zelensky, this trip to Paris is about more than optics. It is about survival. Ukraine's counteroffensives have cost dearly, and Russian forces remain entrenched in the east and south. His task is to secure promises that can outlast election cycles, promises that guarantee weapons, training and financial support will continue to flow regardless of political winds. Without them, Ukraine risks being stranded, its fate dependent on uncertain allies. For Macron, the stakes are just as high. He has long spoken of Europe's need for strategic autonomy, for the capacity to defend itself independently if necessary. Now, as the war drags on and US leadership wavers, France has a chance to prove that vision can become reality. Hosting Zelensky at the Élysée is a demonstration of leadership, but the test lies in what commitments emerge from the coalition summit. History weighs heavily on this moment. Europe has been here before, in 1938, when hesitation led to disaster, during the Cold War, when dependence on Washington became the cornerstone of security. Today, Europe faces its own trial. Can it act decisively in defence of its values, or will it once again wait for others to shoulder the burden? The meeting at the Élysée sends several messages at once. To Moscow, it declares that Europe's resolve remains intact. To Washington, it signals that Europe is prepared to step up, to take ownership of its own security. To the Ukrainian people, it offers a measure of reassurance. You are not alone. Your allies still stand beside you. But questions remain. Will the coalition commit to hard guarantees, or will it fall back on vague assurances? Will nations pledge real resources, troops, funding, long-term defence contracts, or will political caution prevail? These are the uncertainties that hang over the grand gestures. As Zelensky departs the Élysée later tonight, Paris will remain quiet, its streets lined with tourists and Parisians going about their routines. Yet behind the palace doors, decisions of enormous consequence are taking shape. For Ukraine, this visit is a fight for existence. For France, it is a chance to lead Europe into a new era of responsibility. For the continent as a whole, it is the defining test of whether democratic nations can act together in the face of aggression. The images may seem familiar, a handshake, a meeting, the exchange of words between leaders, but in this moment, they are far more than ceremony. They are the symbols of a struggle between freedom and domination, between unity and hesitation. History will remember whether these symbols were followed by action. Tonight, the Élysée Palace has been more than a backdrop. It has been a stage where history unfolded, where two leaders stood together and prepared for the decisions that will shape Europe's future. Tomorrow, the coalition of the willing will be asked to turn promises into commitments. For now, the world has witnessed the opening act. Emmanuel Macron welcoming Volodymyr Zelensky to Paris, declaring with every gesture that Ukraine's fight is Europe's fight.
Pour le français, 2 pour l'ukrainien, c'est ça? Second. Bien. Monsieur le Président, cher Volodymyr. Merci.